A night flight from New York to London, the passenger cabin quiet and still. A pregnant woman in an elegant gray dress clutches her stomach, suddenly leaning forward, her face turning pale white. A flight attendant panics, calling out, "Is there a doctor on board? Anyone?" Silence fills the cabin. Then a simple man in a brown jacket stands up saying, "I'm not a doctor, but I handled emergency medical situations in the military." He kneels down, supporting her, his voice calm and steady. "Breathe deeply. Don't be afraid." People begin to whisper, "What's he doing?" But when the overhead light flashes, someone gasps loudly, "Wait, that's Eleanor Voss, the CEO of Vostech." And the entire cabin falls completely silent. Daniel Hayes, 37 years old, single dad, mechanical engineer, lost his wife 5 years ago, now raising his daughter Lily, who is 8 years old. Clara Brooks, 31 years old, single mother raising twin babies Ethan and Ella, who are 4. The setting is Vermont during Christmas, roads covered in thick snow, a small town glowing with warm yellow lights. Daniel lives with Lily in a small wooden house on the edge of town. His wife died in a car accident when Lily was 3, and since that day, he abandoned all big dreams and chose quiet, peaceful life, focused entirely on raising his daughter. He works as a mechanical engineer at a local plant, steady work that pays bills, but offers no excitement beyond survival. This Christmas, Lily said something that broke his heart and gave him hope. "Dad, I wish the snow would bring someone to make you smile again." He only smiled sadly. "Snow only brings cold, sweetheart." But children see things adults forget. They believe in magic when logic says magic is impossible. That evening, he goes out to buy gifts, budget toys from the discount store, because money is tight for single fathers. Snow begins falling heavily as he loads the sled. On the way home, pulling the sled through deepening drifts, he sees a car stop mid-road, hazard lights blinking weakly through white curtain of falling snow. A woman desperately tries starting the engine, and inside 2 small children cry loudly, their frightened voices cutting through the muffled silence. Daniel doesn't hesitate. He knocks on the frost-covered window. "Do you need help?" The woman looks up, face pale with cold and fear. "The car died. I'm scared the babies will freeze." He immediately opens the door, wrapping the 2 shivering children in his own coat, feeling their tiny bodies trembling. "There's a motel nearby. Let me take you there." "You can't stay here." She hesitates, pride and desperation warring on her tired face. "I don't have cash to pay you back." Daniel shakes his head firmly. "I don't charge people who need help. Come on, before the road gets worse." As they transfer children and a bag into his truck, the interior light illuminates her face clearly, and Daniel freezes. She looks so much like someone he knew. Something about her eyes, the way she moves, triggers a memory he can't grasp. They drive in silence through the storm, only the heater running and twins' quiet whimpering filling the space. Daniel keeps glancing at her profile, that nagging familiarity growing stronger. She notices but says nothing, her own face showing recognition mixed with sorrow. When they arrive at the small motel, the owner, Mrs. Peterson, looks surprised to see Daniel bringing in a woman and 2 children at this hour during a blizzard. He explains quickly, and Mrs. Peterson, who has known Daniel since his wife died, immediately prepares a room with extra blankets. Daniel carries both twins, one in each arm, their small hands gripping his collar trustingly. Clara follows with the single bag, eyes never leaving her children. That universal mother's anxiety etched across her features. Inside the warm room, Daniel helps Clara wrap children in blankets, movements gentle and practiced from years caring for Lily. "I'll make sure your car gets towed tomorrow," he says, pulling out his phone. "Don't worry about cost tonight. Mrs. Peterson won't charge you until you're back on feet." Clara's eyes fill with tears, overwhelmed. "Thank you so much. I don't even know your name." Daniel Hayes." He extends his hand. She takes it, and when their hands touch, something passes between them, a jolt of recognition that makes them both pause. Clara Brooks. They hold the handshake a moment too long, both feeling that inexplicable connection. As he turns to leave, Clara's voice stops him at the door. Daniel Hayes, from Vermont Community Hospital? He turns back, confused. Yes, my wife was treated there. Why? Clara's face transforms, tears flowing. I was there too. I was a nursing student. I was on shift the night your wife passed away. The room spins slightly, Daniel gripping the doorframe. 5 years of carefully constructed walls threaten to crumble. The snow outside continues falling, and somewhere in the universe, timing and fate align in ways too perfect to be random. The motel owner later recalled, he carried both babies, shivering from cold but still smiling, saying, "We just need one blanket. The little ones are priority." That was the first time I saw him look alive again. In the motel room, after Daniel leaves, Clara wraps blankets around twins until they stop shivering and drift into exhausted sleep. She sits by the window, watching snow accumulate, mind racing with memories she thought she'd buried. 20 minutes later, a knock on the door. Daniel returning with thermos of hot tea and cookies from the diner. Thought you might need something warm, he says, voice gentle, careful not to wake sleeping children. Clara accepts gratefully, wrapping cold hands around the warm cup. Thank you, really. I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't stopped. Daniel settles into the other chair, maintaining respectful distance. I'm used to fixing machines, but rescuing people is rarer, though tonight felt like I was meant to be on that road at exactly that moment. She smiles softly. I never expected to be rescued by a stranger, though I guess you're not entirely a stranger, are you? Daniel leans forward slightly, that sense of familiarity impossible to ignore. Have we met before? Beyond the hospital, I mean. Clara is silent for several seconds, choosing words carefully, the weight of what she's revealing evident in her expression. Maybe you don't remember. It was 2015, St. Clair Hospital. I was a nursing student assigned to oncology ward. Your wife, Sarah, was one of my patients during her final weeks. Daniel's breath catches, his entire body going still. The name, spoken aloud by someone who knew her, cuts through him like a blade. Clara continues, voice thick with emotion. She was the kindest patient I ever cared for. Even in terrible pain, she would ask about my studies, encourage me to keep going when I felt overwhelmed. The night she passed, I was on shift. I was there when she wrote her final letters. The room feels smaller suddenly, walls closing in as past and present collide. I don't know what to say, Daniel manages, voice barely above a whisper. Clara reaches into her bag with trembling hands. You don't have to say anything. Before she died, Sarah said something I've carried for 5 years. She said, tell Daniel that I believe he will save someone again. Tell him not to close his heart forever. Daniel's composure shatters. 5 years of held-back grief, of carefully maintained control, of forcing himself to keep functioning for Lily's sake. All of it breaks apart in this small motel room during a snowstorm. Tears stream down his face as he covers it with his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Clara moves to kneel beside his chair, placing gentle hand on his arm, her own tears falling. She knew, Daniel chokes out, she knew I would shut down after she was gone, and she tried to prevent it even from beyond death. Clara nods. She loved you so much. Every conversation we had, she found a way to talk about you, about Lily, about the life you'd built together. She made me promise something. Daniel looks up, eyes red and swollen. What did she make you promise? Clara pulls an old worn envelope from her jacket pocket, paper yellowed with age and handling. She gave me this letter. She made me promise to keep it until I could find you on a winter night when snow was falling. She said you'd need to hear her words when the time was right, not immediately after her death, but later, when you were ready to open your heart again. With shaking hands, Daniel takes the envelope, recognizing Sarah's handwriting instantly, the familiar loops and curves he used to see on grocery lists and birthday cards. He opens it carefully, reverently, and begins to read through tears that blur the words. Clara looks away, giving him privacy in this intimate moment. The letter reads, My dearest Daniel, if you're reading this, Clara found you during a snowstorm, just as I hoped. Don't be afraid of this moment. Don't close yourself off. I need you to understand. Loving again doesn't mean forgetting me. Living again doesn't mean betraying our memories. When you meet someone in the snow, someone who needs help, don't be scared to open your heart's door, because I'll be there, watching through their eyes, loving you through their kindness. You saved me every day of our marriage by being exactly who you are. Now save yourself by allowing yourself to be saved. I love you eternally, Sarah. Daniel reads it twice, 3 times, the words sinking into places frozen for 5 years. When he finally looks up, he sees the twins have woken and are watching him with wide, curious eyes. And standing in the doorway, having been quietly let in by Mrs. Peterson, is Lily, holding her grandmother's hand, having been brought to check on her father when he didn't return home. "Daddy?" Lily's voice is small and worried. "Why are you crying?" Daniel wipes his face quickly, trying to compose himself. But Lily has already crossed the room, throwing her arms around his neck. "It's okay, Daddy. Remember what I said? The snow brings someone to make you smile again." She pulls back, looking at Clara and twins with the uncomplicated acceptance of children. Did it work? Clara, watching the scene unfold, feels something shift in her chest. She'd carried Sarah's letter for 5 years, through her own pregnancy, through giving birth to twins alone, through countless nights, wondering if she'd ever find this man, if Sarah's dying wish would ever be fulfilled. And now, in this moment, she sees that she wasn't just delivering a message. She was part of something much larger. "Yes, sweetheart," Daniel says to Lily, voice steadier now. "The snow brought friends, very special friends." Lily immediately approaches the twins, introducing herself with fearless enthusiasm. "I'm Lily. Do you want to see the snow angel I made?" The twins nod shyly, and within minutes, all 3 children are playing together as if they've known each other forever. Daniel and Clara stand watching them, this unexpected tableau of connection and healing. "I came to Vermont specifically to find you," Clara admits quietly. "After 5 years, I finally decided to honor Sarah's wish. I quit my nursing job in Boston, packed everything I owned into that broken car, and drove here hoping to find Daniel Hayes, who Sarah loved so much." A motel guest in the next room later shared, "I heard him through the wall saying, 'Thank you for reminding me that helping people isn't a burden, it's a mission.'" His voice was broken, but somehow stronger than before. The next morning, snow transformed the world into pristine white landscapes sparkling under clear blue sky. Daniel arrived early to help Clara with her car, hands covered in grease as he worked under the hood, while the twins played with Lily nearby, making snow angels, already inseparable after one night. "Where were you headed when the car broke down?" Daniel asked, adjusting the engine. Clara watched him work, noting his capable hands, the focused competence born from years of experience. "I was heading to find you, actually, had your old address from hospital records." Daniel paused, looked up. "We moved after Sarah died. Too many memories. But how did you plan to find me without my current address?" Clara smiled sadly. "I was going to ask around town. Small communities know each other. Someone would point me toward Daniel Hayes, the widower with a young daughter. He returned to working. You could have just mailed the letter, didn't have to drive all this way. Some messages are too important for mail, and honestly, I needed to see you were okay. Sarah worried so much about what would happen after she was gone." Daniel tightened a final bolt, wiped his hands. "Okay is relative. I've been functioning, taking care of Lily, going through motions, but actually living instead of existing? I don't think I've been okay since she died." Clara placed a hand on his arm. "Sarah knew that would happen. That's why she left the letter. Why did you wait 5 years? Why not bring it sooner?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Because Sarah made me promise to wait for the right moment. She said I'd know when I found you during a snowstorm, when circumstances aligned like fate. I've driven this route 4 winters in a row, always during the first snowstorm, hoping to find you needing help so I could help you the way you just helped me." Daniel stared at her, overwhelmed. "You've been looking for me for 4 years? During snowstorms?" Sarah was very specific. She said, when I found you helping someone in the snow, that's when you'd be ready to receive her message. You'd need to remember who you really are, a man who saves people, before you could accept that you deserve to be saved too. The engine suddenly roared to life, startling them both. Daniel stepped back. Well, your car is fixed. You're free to go now. But neither moved, both recognizing that fixing the car had become the least important thing happening. Daniel, there's something else Sarah wanted you to know. Something she made me promise to tell you only if I found you helping someone. He waited, sensing whatever came next would change everything. What is it? Clara pulled out her phone, showed him a photo. These twins, Ethan and Ella, I named them after Sarah's favorite grandparents. She swiped to another photo showing Sarah in her hospital bed, smiling despite illness, holding Clara's hand. This was taken the day before she died. She'd just found out I was pregnant and afraid. Unsure if I could handle being a single mother. Tears flowed freely now. Sarah made me promise something that day, she said. Clara, when you find Daniel, tell him that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. Tell him that opening his heart to your children wouldn't be replacing the family he lost. It would be honoring the family he had. She knew. Daniel, even while dying, she was trying to make sure you wouldn't spend your life alone. Daniel felt his knees go weak, reached out to steady himself. She was trying to set me up from beyond the grave? Clara laughed through tears. Not set you up exactly. She was making sure that if we ever met, you'd understand that whatever feelings might develop, she gave us her blessing. She told me you were the best man she'd ever known, that whoever was lucky enough to love you next would have to earn it by being brave enough to reach past your grief. The children's laughter rang out across the snow. 3 kids who met yesterday but played like lifelong friends. Daniel watched them, saw Lily's face lit with genuine joy for the first time in years, saw these twins who looked at him with trust despite barely knowing him, and felt something crack open in his chest, something locked tight since Sarah died. I can't do this. I can't let myself feel this. It's too much, too fast. I'm not ready. Clara didn't argue, just said quietly, Sarah knew you'd say that. She wrote a second part to the letter. She pulled out another folded paper, even older and more worn, clearly read many times. Daniel took it, hands trembling, and read, Daniel, by the time you read this, you'll be panicking, thinking it's too soon, too much, too disloyal. Stop, take a breath. Remember that I knew you better than anyone. I know you think loving again means forgetting me, but love doesn't work like that. Your heart isn't a pie where giving someone a piece means less for everyone else. Your heart is a garden, and it grows bigger with every person you let in. I'm not asking you to replace me. I'm asking you to honor what we had by being brave enough to have it again, in whatever form it takes. Trust the snow, my love. Trust fate. Trust yourself. You are not betraying me by living. You're fulfilling the last wish of a woman who loved you more than life itself. Daniel read it 3 times, and on the third reading, something fundamental shifted inside him. 5 years of guilt fell away like snow sliding off a roof in spring thaw. He looked at Clara, really saw her for the first time not as Sarah's nurse or messenger, but as a woman who drove through 4 winters looking for him, who carried his dead wife's blessing like sacred trust, who showed up with 2 beautiful children and a heart brave enough to risk rejection. She really planned all of this? He asked, wonder in his voice. Clara nodded. Down to making sure I'd be stuck somewhere in Vermont during the first major snowstorm after you'd had enough time to heal. Lily ran over, cheeks flushed from cold and excitement, Ethan and Ella trailing behind. Daddy, they don't have anywhere to stay. Can they stay with us, please? The twins looked up at Daniel with hopeful eyes, and Clara started to say it wasn't appropriate, but Daniel surprised himself by saying, Yes, we have extra rooms. You should stay, at least until you figure out your next steps. Clara's eyes widened. Daniel, are you sure? This is happening very fast. He smiled, the first real smile in years. Sarah said to trust the snow. The snow brought you to me, and I'm choosing to trust that she knew what she was doing. A passerby who witnessed them in the parking lot later told the local paper, I saw them embrace in the snow. It didn't look like new love. It looked like old souls finding each other again, the way they held each other. It was like watching a family that had been separated finally coming home. 1 month passes, and Clara and the twins have become part of the daily rhythm of Daniel and Lily's life. Clara finds work at the local clinic, her nursing skills needed and appreciated in the small community. The twins attend preschool with subsidized tuition that Daniel helps Clara secure. Every evening, the 5 of them have dinner together, a chaotic, joyful affair with 3 children talking over each other and 2 adults learning to navigate co-parenting. Daniel teaches Ethan and Ella basic mechanics, letting them hand him tools and explaining how engines work in simple terms they can understand. Clara teaches Lily to bake, the 2 of them covering the kitchen in flour while making cookies and bread. Slowly, carefully, they're building something neither of them expected but both desperately needed, a family. One afternoon, Clara finds Daniel standing in front of the mantel, looking at a photo of Sarah. She approaches quietly. Having second thoughts? He shakes his head. No, actually, I'm thanking her. I spent 5 years thinking she'd want me to stay frozen in time, to preserve our love like a museum exhibit. But she wanted me to live. She knew that the best way to honor what we had was to be brave enough to have it again, differently but equally real. Clara stands beside him, both of them looking at Sarah's smiling face. She was remarkable. I only knew her a few weeks, but she changed my entire perspective on what courage looks like. Facing death while worrying about the people you'll leave behind, making plans to care for them even when you're gone. That's a kind of love most people never experience. Daniel turns to Clara. I need to tell you something. When I found you in that snowstorm, I wasn't looking to fall in love again. I wasn't looking for a family. I was just trying to help someone who needed it. But Sarah knew something I didn't. She knew that's when I'd be most likely to find what I needed, when I wasn't looking for it. Clara smiles. So you're saying you love me? Daniel laughs, the sound genuine and surprised. I'm saying I might be falling in love with you, which terrifies me and excites me and feels like betrayal and feels like coming home all at the same time. Clara takes his hand. Sarah gave us her blessing, Daniel. We're allowed to be happy. In fact, I think we're honoring her by being happy. They stand together in the living room, looking out at the snow-covered yard where 3 children are building a snowman, their laughter drifting through the window. I never thought I'd have this again, Daniel admits quietly. A house full of noise and chaos and love. After Sarah died, I thought that chapter was over. That evening, they sit the children down for a serious conversation. 3 kids look up with curious faces, sensing something important is about to be said. Daniel begins. You know how we've all been living together for a while now? The kids nod. Well, Clara and I have been talking, and we want to know how you feel about making this permanent. Lily's face lights up. You mean they'd stay forever? Not just visiting? Clara nods. If that's okay with everyone, we'd officially become a family. Ethan, always the thoughtful one despite being only 4, asks, but what about our other dad? Clara's face falls slightly, the pain of her past evident. Daniel answers, your dad isn't able to be here, buddy. But if you'd like, I could try to be a dad for you and Ella. Ella, the more emotional twin, starts crying happy tears. We can have a daddy? Daniel kneels down, pulling both twins into a hug. If you want me to be your daddy, I would be honored. Lily joins the hug, and soon Clara is part of it too. 5 people holding each other in the middle of the living room while snow falls outside, gentle and persistent. From today forward, I choose to see each person a little longer than a passing glance. I choose to trust that closed chapters can open new ones. I will live with kindness. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the night Daniel found Clara and the twins in the snowstorm, they host a small celebration in their yard. The weather has cooperated, delivering the first snow of the season right on schedule. 4 children now. They've officially adopted the twins, and Clara has taken Daniel's last name, though they both insist they're honoring Sarah's memory, not replacing it. The kids work together to make a sign reading The Hayes Family, all 4 contributing drawings and handprints. Daniel reads Sarah's original letter aloud to gathered friends and family, his voice steady now where it would have broken a year ago. She said to trust the snow, and I did. She said love multiplies, and it has. She said I'd know when the time was right, and I did. Clara stands beside him, one arm around his waist, watching their children play in the snow. "Do you think she can see us?" she asks quietly. Daniel nods with certainty. "I know she can, and I know she's smiling, probably laughing at how perfectly her plan worked out." Lily approaches them, now 9 years old and wise beyond her years. "Mom, Clara, can I ask you something?" Clara kneels down to Lily's level, still getting used to being called Mom, but loving it every time. "Of course, sweetheart." Lily's expression is serious. "Did my first mom know you'd love us this much?" Clara's eyes fill with tears. "Yes, baby. I think that's exactly what she knew. She knew that when I found your dad helping someone in a snowstorm, it would mean he was still the same good man she fell in love with. And she knew that if he was still that man, I'd fall in love with him too." Lily hugs her tight. "I'm glad she was so smart." As the celebration continues, neighbors stop by, bringing food and warm wishes. Mrs. Peterson from the motel brings a framed photo she took that first night, Daniel carrying the twins into the motel with Clara following behind. "I knew that night," Mrs. Peterson says. "I saw the way you looked at her, the way she looked at you." Later, after guests have left and children are tucked in bed, Daniel and Clara sit on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching snow continue to fall. "What would you say to her?" Clara asks. "If Sarah were here right now?" Daniel thinks for a long moment. "I'd say thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to plan for my future even while dying. Thank you for seeing what I needed before I knew I needed it." Inside, Lily is woken and is standing at her window watching her parents on the porch. She pulls out a small notebook where she's been writing letters to her mother in heaven. She writes, "Dear Mom, Dad is happy again. You sent us Clara and the twins, and now we're a real family. Thank you for the snow. Love, Lily." The next morning, they discover someone has built a snow angel in their front yard, 5 figures holding hands arranged in a circle. A note stuck in the snow reads, "For the family that the snow brought together." Danielle takes a photo, planning to frame it alongside Sarah's letter and the picture from the motel. That afternoon, they visit Sarah's grave for the first time as a complete family. Daniel places fresh flowers, then steps back, allowing Clara to approach the headstone. She places her hand on the cold marble. "I did what you asked, Sarah. I found him. I gave him your letter, and I fell in love with him just like you knew I would. Thank you for trusting me with something so precious." As they drive home, Daniel feels a sense of peace he hasn't felt in 6 years. The guilt that plagued him has been replaced by gratitude that Sarah loved him enough to plan for his happiness. The fear that he was betraying her memory has been replaced by understanding that living fully is the greatest tribute he can offer. If you believe that healing stories like this deserve to be shared, that love can survive death and create new beginnings, that grief and joy can coexist in the same heart, then share this story and subscribe. We tell the stories that should never be forgotten because sometimes the coldest season brings the warmest love, and every act of kindness creates ripples we may never see, but the world will always feel.